All right, man, peace. So this is going to be part two to the Bob McNair making the analogy of the NFL being a prison for the professional football players. So this is the panel on Speak for Yourself. They're going to talk about this issue, and of course, I'm going to chime in.
That was dirty. All right, hello and welcome. We're joined today by a couple of Super Bowl champs, Eric Davis and Willie McGinnis. Let's start in the NFL, where the conflict over the national anthem protest just got some more fuel. According to a new ESPN report on last week's meeting between the players and the owners, Texans owner Bob McNair expressed concerns about how the protests were affecting business and said, quote, "We can't let the inmates run the prison." The comment sparked outrage on social media, and reportedly some of the Texans players threatened to walk out of practice today. Texans wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins went so far as to skip practice today as a result of McNair's comments. McNair issued an apology, but Richard Sherman of the Seattle Seahawks says he...
Look, nothing against DeAndre Hopkins or any of the other Houston Texan players. They walked out only to come back. My thing is, if you're going to walk out, then stay out. That would impress me. If these guys are truly that offended, then leave the team and never come back. Say that you're so offended that you no longer want to play under the stewardship of Bob McNair anymore. What the point is of leaving practice and then coming back a day later, I really do not see what the point of that is, other than to show that you're a petulant child.
He shouldn't have. Saying, quote, tweeting, quote, "I can appreciate people being candid. Don't apologize. You meant what you said. Showing true colors always allows people to see you for who you are."
Now, I agree with the sentiment of Richard Sherman's first tweet, but the second tweet provides proper context to the first tweet. He really wants people to show who they are so that he can figure out who he can attack due to his super liberal fascist viewpoints. And please remember, Richard Sherman a few years ago, he made the news because he was one of the first black athletes to say that it's not that black lives matter, it's that all lives matter. So clearly, due to him being in the Seattle Seahawks woke locker room, he's been recalibrated by Michael Bennett and Doug Baldwin and a lot of the other woke black liberal athletes in the Seattle Seahawks locker room.
You are. I wish more people would do that so the world could ostracize those who don't want to see equality.
Now, isn't that interesting? One of the main platforms of the woke black liberal movement, one of the main platforms is that they want to be welcoming and tolerant. Isn't that what they say? But Richard Sherman says that people should speak how they want to speak and be candid and be honest and forthright so that they can basically be targeted for termination, or as he would put it, being ostracized. I mean, my question for Richard Sherman is, who is it in the world who actually is going to ostracize Bob McNair for his statements? In Richard Sherman's mind. And once again, the next time that I hear Richard Sherman say something deep or intelligent will be the first time. I've never heard that man say anything that made me say, oh, wow, okay. The liberal media gives this man so much credit because he went to, one of the so-called higher institutions of learning, Stanford. I don't see it. I'm sorry. To me, Richard Sherman is an attention monger. I'm not saying that he's a dumb brother. I'm just saying that I don't see the super genius factor that the liberal sports media tries to associate with him. And if you believe in equality, then and you believe in people's right to free speech, it does not just entail what you agree with. It also entails people saying things that you might not like. And Bob McNair is not going to be ostracized by anyone, not as long as he's writing checks.
Otherwise, they will continue to hide. Cowherd, the McNair need to apologize.
Well, yeah, because A, words matter, and B, you're seeing the reaction. I mean, here's the reality. McNair said what a lot, maybe not all, but a lot of players think owners think of them.
I agree with that. That is why I stated that Bob McNair's statements lack tact and decorum and awareness. But once again, that phrase, not to let the inmates run the asylum, he changed it to prison. But it's really not to let the inmates run the asylum. That's something that people in the higher levels of the corporate world have said, since there's been a corporate layout. That's nothing new. But right now, the black liberal athletes, they're so emotional, like a woman on her menstrual. You can't say anything around them or they're going to throw a tantrum.
And so when that comes out, and I'm a player, and I'm a black player, and I think, oh, yeah, that's what we thought. And so, listen, now, if I'm McNair, I think my first issue is, how the hell did this get out? This was...
Well, it's not that hard to figure out. The story was written by an ESPN sports writer. As I've already noted, ESPN is at the forefront of promoting the woke athlete versus the NFL owner issue. They're really cutting off their nose to spite their face because they have a multi-billion-dollar deal with the NFL to broadcast their games. So really all that's going to happen is down the line, if they assist the NFL if they assist the socialist higher-ups in recalibrating the NFL and turning it into a woke league, it's only going to hurt their bottom line in the long run. It's going to hurt everybody's bottom line. And you can see by the line of players in that background photo, all on one knee, how easy it is to manipulate the so-called black male. Not the black man, but the so-called black male. Because they really don't know up from down. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And they're not sure what they really should do because of the pressure of social media. They don't want to be called out on their Twitter or their Snapchat or their Instagram for being sellouts and coons. So it really is just a comedy of errors.
This was probably said between two or... But I would say that is exactly what a lot of players think owners think of them.
Well, I think it's also what a lot of business owners think of their employees.
Agreed. Once again, if the corporate layout, if the paradigm of a boss and an employee is something that you don't like, if you want to be viewed as somebody who can call your own shots or should be calling your own shots, then you should start your own business. I don't know why these NFL players who claim to be so aware and awake and alert, why they don't get together in the off season and say, let's form our own league. We may not get it off the ground this season, next season, but 5 or 6 years down the line, we can start our own league. We have platforms that we can televise our games on. We can make a deal with one of these social media sites and see what we can get done. Instead, they want to see if they can change the minds of 70 and 75-year-old Caucasian billionaires. This is why I tell you, brothers, all these guys really want is a hug. They really just want, it's like the Caucasian owners, they represent the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. The thrill is just getting into the meeting room and saying, oh, you're finally accepting me here. Now I'm going to lay out why I feel you should agree with me. You're not going to lay out any incentives for the owners. You already know the owners think according to the bottom line. The players have not laid out step by step why it's best for the owners to assist them in socially engineering society through the NFL. They haven't said, this is what you plan, this is what you can gain from assisting me. When you communicate with a businessman, you have to communicate with him on the level of business. If you can't do that, then he's not going to take you seriously. He's going to look at you really as what most of these guys are, just teenagers trying to act like they're adults.
And if you've ever owned a business or run a business and had employees try to tell you how to run and operate your business, this is what you think. This cliche, even though he bungled it, is a cliche for a reason, because a lot of people feel this way.
Agreed.
And then I just want to be clear in terms of this leaking out. If I'm Bob McNair, I feel betrayed because this wasn't said in front of the players. This was said among ownership and Roger Goodell and Joe Lockhart. I don't know if Joe Lockhart was there, but Troy Vincent was there. He thought he was in a group of his peers and people that either work for him.
Make it any better?
No. First of all, no.
Well, look, let me say this. He shouldn't feel betrayed. Whatever you say, you should be ready to explain or expound upon if you're confronted with what you said. I don't know what the overall setting of the meeting was. I don't know if media were allowed in the room. I'm not sure if Troy Vincent or somebody associated with Roger Goodell may have told someone in the media exactly what was stated in the meeting. But if you're Bob McNair, you shouldn't be embarrassed about what you said, if that's what you meant. I believe that I believe that he meant it to be overtly racist? No, but as I stated in part 1 of this little series, sometimes people speak according to their subconscious. It really shouldn't be affecting the NFL players, because their mindset should be to maximize their earning potential while they are within the shelf life of their NFL career. Their mindset is not supposed to be, I'm going to sit down at a meeting table with you and I'm equal to you, even though I'm in my 3rd or 4th year in the NFL and you're a multi-billionaire owner, because you're not equal to them. And this is part of the embracing of the topsy-turvy, chaotic mentality here in modern day America, where everybody just wants to look at everyone and act like they're an expert in everything, and that they should be taken seriously just because they've had conversations in the YouTube comment section or Twitter or Facebook, and they're woke. And so you should take them seriously because they're not going to take it anymore. No, that's not how life works. It's not how life works.
No, behind closed doors, it makes it better.
No, because that's your take. I'm not offended by it. Again, this is if you've ever owned a business, or it's a cliche for a reason, I'm capable of saying that. I've said many things privately, publicly, that people could act like they're all offended by. It's not remotely that offensive. It's a cliche.
I agree, but the real reason why it's so offensive to most of these black NFL players is because they need the validation of the elite Caucasians. They need it. They don't feel complete unless they can get that 65, 70-year-old Caucasian owner to say, Raheem, I love you. Now come here, give me a hug. Let me give you a kiss on the forehead. Now let's sit down together. We're going to write down this. Let's get a piece of loose leaf and let's write down everything that we want to get done to save the black community. Let's write it together. Okay, we're going to change the educational system together, me and you, Raheem. And then we're going to go to, we're going to change the, the political system so that more blacks can be put in an office, because, that's going to help me out in my business, Raheem. And then we're going to help you with, the job force. Oh, and by the way, we're going to stop you guys from going to prison. We're going to take all the drugs out of your community, Raheem. All right. It's just going to be me and you, Raheem. Let's go. Let's hold hands and skip down the yellow brick road together. This is how ridiculous, how ludicrous, and how idiotic and simple-minded a lot of these woke people are.
I get that everybody is acting.
I do agree with that. In business, what you're saying, I've heard it multiple times. But the way he referenced it, the state of the NFL and the players and everything that's happening, I just think it was bad timing and it was poor taste of using those words.
I agree. It was bad timing. It was poor taste, and it showed no tact and no scope, no understanding of what was really going on. There's a certain way that you should be trying to express yourself. But what that really implies or indicates is a person, an entity, and a Bob McNair and the other owners who are not accustomed to having to be held accountable for what they say. Why is that? Because they have so much clout that they view themselves to be untouchable. And once you hit the billionaire club, you pretty much are untouchable. You pretty much just do what you want to do. Your money your money accumulates on its own, and you really just sit back and you try to stay ahead of the curve.
And he apologized on the spot.
He did.
No, which is why, so the question is, should he apologize for it? Yes, it's coming out. He should apologize for that statement because of the state of everything that's going on. Yes, it is a cliche. Yes, but what this does do, it just shows, like, basically, right now, as you said, this is not a partnership. Because I've heard you discuss this as it's affecting the bottom line, and the players need to understand it's a partnership, and that it's going to affect them. But no. But the owners don't view this as a partnership. The owners view this as, this is mine, and you do what I say.
Well, of course they're going to view it like that because they own they own the licensing for the stadium and for the team logos, for the uniforms, etc. Really, what you are when you're an NFL player, you're a contractor with a limited amount of rights. You represent like a molecule in the overall mass of NFL players. But you as an individual, you're not a partner. Now, as part of the collective of the NFL players, you represent a partner because you share in the revenue. But you're not a partner per se, not on the level of an owner. The owner is the one who's going to have he's going to have the higher amount of clout and influence. That's what is incumbent in the term owner. As a player and as a contractor, of course, you're the one who is providing the product on the field. You're attracting the fan base. But you're expendable at the end of the day. The owner is not viewed as being expendable. As long as that owner is doing what's in the best interest of the NFL, meaning continuing to make the league money. This protest is costing the league money. So people who are trying to put the owners in a light of blame, or this is the owner's fault, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. Now, the president of the United States can cast the owners as the people to blame because he can affect their money. It all goes back to the money. So when these guys go into the conference room and they try to sit down and appeal to the emotions of the owners are already saying to themselves, okay, how much time do we have left here with these idiots? And that's what they should be thinking.
But you need each other. But they need each other.
But you need each other. There are things called limited partnerships.
No, understood.
Right. And so, again, if I've paid for the team and spent $1 billion, couple of $1 billion, whatever, on the team, and you get a limited partnership. I'm going to give you 48% of the revenue. Law firms work this way. Some people in the partnership have more power than others.
But if that was true and you own the business and I was a limited partner, if those words came out, I would still be like, well, that's how Whitlock sees me. I thought.
Yeah, he sees you as, look, you're not in control of this. And again, if I were running a multi-billion-dollar business, I wouldn't want these kids running it.
Absolutely not. Because they're all dominated by their emotions. And most of these guys, a lot of these modern day NFL players were raised in very chaotic environments. Let's be for real, most of them were raised by single mothers. The so-called black community, for the most part, is a matriarchy, and that's why it's at the bottom. Because when when the energy of the female is the dominant energy, all the things that make the woman essential, like the nurturing and the sensitive side of the woman, that brings the balance that is essential in a community. When you allow it to be dominant, that affects the so-called black man in a way that's really not beneficial for him, because the man has to have a certain nature and the woman has a certain nature. When they come together in combination, then you have a totality. When the man takes on the nature of the woman and he tries to go out into the real world with that nature, it's going to be very deleterious for him. He's not going to be able to interact with other races of men on the level that he needs to, which is an unemotional level. People are always talking about economics. So-called black people love to talk about the problem with the black community is the economics. No, it's not. The issue is the culture. A lot of you black men are scared to confront the so-called black woman. You're scared to confront yourself and make yourself the master, make yourself the lead, make yourself the head. You're scared to be a lone wolf. Sometimes you have to be a lone wolf until you can understand who you are so that you can go out and lead. These guys who are trying to lead these anthem protests, they're being guided by other forces. I've already noted this. Behind the scenes, they're being guided by things like the Black Lives Matter movement, which in and of itself is being guided by the Caucasian liberals, the liberal elite per se, and the international bankers. So it's just a dog that's being wagged by its tail. All right. So I mean that's where you get the film Wag the Dog from. People think that these movements are legitimate. They're not legitimate. This stuff is contrived. And you could tell that it's contrived because most of the leadership, like this guy Malcolm Jenkins, they cannot really explain anything. This is why even he was flummoxed when they asked him about Colin Kaepernick. And he said Colin Kaepernick was invited, but he didn't show up.
No, I'm going to give you an example.
I get that.
I'm going to give you a real life example. Anquan Bolden is one of the leaders of this. He wrote a piece in Time magazine. I'm committed to activism, and I've walked away from football because activism is what I want to do. 2 days later, a day later, 24, I want to get back in the NFL.
Who's surprised by that? As I've already stated, a lot of these black males, they have the mentality of the female. When I say they have the mentality of the female, what do I mean? I mean that they're capricious and they're whimsical. Once again, this is not a female, an anti-female channel. But the problem with the so-called black man is that the so-called black man a lot of times has never been taught anything. And I always return to this. I always return to this sentiment. Brothers have never been taught anything. So they're raised in environments that are dominated by female energy, which is chaotic energy. And they're not shown what the right way is to handle situations. And then they're being put in positions of leadership because of their athletic prowess as opposed to their mental acuity. And this is why I've made videos in the past about black athletes being put as leaders. This is purposeful. It's purposeful. Athletes are put on pedestals in this society so that we can look at them as beacons of hope. And look, give them credit. They worked hard in their craft, in their field of endeavor, and they've excelled. But that does not mean that they're qualified to engage in debates or in conversations regarding high-level issues like race or economics. And this is what these guys are trying to do. They're trying to engage the owners in criminal justice reform, NFL owners in criminal justice reform. Like, what is it in your skull that makes you think that even the NFL owners are qualified to do what you're asking them to do? You're really trying to extort them, and it's not going to end well for you. That's why I make the comparison of guys trying to rob a bank and thinking that they're going to get away with it. It's not going to end well.
This is who they're dealing with. Kids. And I say this as a former college athlete. And I wasn't nearly as talented as these guys or the guys that make the NFL. But when you're an athlete and you go, I'm sorry, you're coddled.
Absolutely. These guys have been coddled from the time, most of them, from the time that they have hit puberty all the way up to now. And they've had a battery put in their back through social media, particularly Twitter. And they feel like they have to rep for the cause, quote unquote, because they've been galvanized by the death of Muhammad Ali. I've stated this numerous times. And they're trying to live out a role. They're not sure really what to do. And they don't know what the end game is. If somebody doesn't know what their end game is, then nothing else that they have to say is really relevant.
This is not the average American. When you have the kind of talent that can get you to the NFL, because I know I had a limited amount of talent that got me to mediocre college football.
You ain't had no damn talent. Your fat ass sat at the end of the bench eating Twizzlers and hot dogs.
They let me walk around my high school and do whatever the hell I want. I'm just sorry. They're negotiating with children.
I agree with that. And you could tell by the comments of most of these NFL players who were present at the meeting that they have the mindset of a child. Meaning, I'm going to throw a tantrum. I don't understand why you can't see that I'm correct. It's like a high schooler. Somebody who's trying to approximate adulthood.
I think a major part of this and a major part of a lot of the frustration is that I think there's an understanding or a feeling that the players don't appreciate the situation and the position that they're in, and the money that they make.
They don't appreciate what?
No. I'm saying that the players don't appreciate. I'm saying that there is this notion that the players don't appreciate the fact that they're that they're making this money, that they are making money, that they are afforded with a life that the normal person doesn't get to do because of this game. I think that if you looked at the numbers, more players per capita with the number of owners and the number of players, the percentages are much higher, the players who appreciate the position that they are in.
I agree with that. But the issue is that the players who, quote unquote, appreciate their position through professional sports, not just the NFL, but through professional sports, are oftentimes silent. And we live in a media-driven society where they're going to put the camera on the people who are who are the loudest, or tend to express themselves the most, to try to make people think that everyone thinks like them. And this is part of the issue with the black super liberals, or with the liberal blacks per se. This is why you have a person like Richard Sherman say, well, let him speak so that we can all ostracize the people who don't want equality. Dude, you can't ostracize the majority. The vast majority of people around the world do not even adhere to notions of equality per se, quote unquote. They adhere to notions of monetary advancement and cultural preservation. That's what they adhere to, which are the two platforms that so-called black people, for the most part, know nothing about. So you're trying to create this pretense that everybody believes what you believe, or like there's this swelling wave of people who are looking for equality, and they think that by capitalizing the letters of equality that's going to make it. No, it's going to put it more on the minds of the masses to want to agree with them, and it's not. You can't ostracize the majority. You can only ostracize the minority.
And as opposed to the owners appreciating that limited partnership and what those players actually do. And I think that's where the frustration comes in when you hear a comment like this. It's not a question of not understanding it's a cliche, but when you hear that, when it's said by one of those guys, that's different.
NBA players, and maybe they're forced to, I think have a greater respect of their employees. LeBron,
NBA owners.
Right.
I don't buy it, but I continue.
I agree. I don't understand. I think that that's narrative. I don't believe that that's fact, that NBA owners respect their players more than NFL owners do. I mean, I guess that you can say based on having guaranteed contracts, but that would probably be the only way that you could try to validate that notion or that sentiment. At the end of the day, when you look at owners like James Dolan or what's this guy's name? The owner with Cleveland, the guy who used to own the Clippers, Donald Sterling. It's pretty much been shown that NBA owners will try to demean and diminish their players if they can get away with it. I remember Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Chicago Bulls, how he pretty much used to just neglect Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was grossly underpaid for years. Now, he did assist Michael Jordan in his baseball dream by assisting him in getting a position with the Chicago White Sox farm system. But of course, he benefited from that as well, because you were going to have people who were going to buy tickets for the Birmingham Barons, things of that nature. And Jordan, to this day, still is not, still has distanced himself from the Chicago Bulls front office because of that. So this notion that the NBA owners, Dan Gilbert, that's his name for Cleveland. And we remember the letter that Dan Gilbert wrote about LeBron after LeBron left. He wrote about him like he was a runaway slave, right? Like that was a memo that he was passing around to every NBA fan. If you see this runaway slave, return him to me or kill him. So I don't believe that Colin is really speaking according to fact. I think he's speaking according to narrative because the NBA is perceived as a woke league.
But NFL owners have never been forced to look really hard and fast at some of their behavior. This has been a very clunky last month. Jerry in the anthem. He offends players.
Yeah, but that's not behavioral. The NFL players had a chance to make the owners scrutinize themselves when they sat down to negotiate the collective bargaining agreement. Of course, they failed in the major point of not forcing guaranteed contracts and also divesting all power to Roger Goodell. So they have no one to blame but themselves in regards to the NFL owners and their conduct.
This owner. The NFL's always been an owners' league. NBA owners.
Still is.
No, but the NBA owners years ago were forced to go acquiesce to some of the players' demands. NFL owners now.
Well, the reason why the NBA owners had to acquiesce to many of the players' demands many years ago is because of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan took the league to such heights in the late 90s that they had a hard time recovering from when he retired the first time. And people always talk about how Jordan only cared about himself. Jordan purposefully held off his retirement in 98. He purposefully held off his retirement speech because he attended the collective bargaining meetings, at least show his face there to make them think that he was going to come back. And then after that is when, after they got the new CBA signed, that's when he officially left and retired. Because the NBA they went through a hard spell after Jordan retired the first time. And he was the one that assisted them in getting a lot of the deals done in regards to that collective bargaining agreement, that lockout that occurred in 98, that assisted them in making great strides. And of course, they made another huge stride in 2011 in the offseason when they had that lockout again, where they had the 66-game season. And, of course, that was, that was a major thing as well. But the NBA, what the players have done, or how they've assisted themselves in receiving respect from the owners, is they have held their ground in the collective bargaining agreement, something that the NFL players have not done.
You know what the NFL owners would say? We generate $14 billion and they generate $5 billion. Have at it. Acquiesce to the children. Run your league for the children.
Well, okay, that's fine. But then when this kind of thing happens, you're going to get ripped.
But here's the point we're missing. First of all, these are grown men with families. Okay?
Yes.
So if they do have opinions. And the notion that months ago that we heard was pretty much, you guys stay in your place and just play football.
Well, no, sir. The real issue is that they have the right to have opinions, but you also have to understand who your constituency is, who your fan base is. If you're a major hip hop star, for example, now, like, what if Jay-Z had come out and supported Trump? He would have lost a large part of his constituency. Once again, brothers, everything is corporate and everything is about corporate branding. There's a reason why LeBron James stood on stage with Hillary Clinton. It was good for his brand. It was consistent with his brand. Some of these guys agreed with the platform of a Donald Trump, his fiscal platform, but they can't come out and say it. Because if they come out and say it, it's going to go against brand, because people are cast in this society according to their so-called race. They're cast in regards to what they should believe in ideologically, economically, societally. So that's the point of the NFL owners. If our constituency is 70% Caucasian from middle America, you guys can't come out and protest against the flag and then think that you're going to be taken seriously and everybody should want to hear your political views. That's not why you're here. And people have been lambasting movie stars and singers for going on and on about their political views for years as well. It's not like it's just singularly aimed at NFL players. So when you're in a business, you have to understand who it is who's purchasing your product.
Right? That's what it felt like to the players. Shut up and play football. We don't want to hear you talking about politics. We don't want to hear you talking about all these other things that's going on.
I also think that people just don't want to hear you speak when they feel like you're not informed on what you're saying. I think that people are used to hearing certain messages being dispensed from certain sources. And if a certain message is being dispensed from a source that they're not accustomed to having that message dispensed from, they'll give it a chance. And, they want to evaluate to see if you actually know what you're talking about. If you show some form of adroitness or knowledge in what you're saying and how you're saying it, then, they'll give you a chance. They'll say, okay, well, this guy seems to be informed. But if you show that you're just somebody looking for attention, they're going to tune you out.
Pretty much just play football. And there are a lot of strong opinions. There are a lot of guys that do a lot of things outside of football. And football is just that's not what they are. That's what they do. And as a grown man, just like your job here and everybody's job, you said in the workplace, at different companies, just because you work for an establishment doesn't mean you have to always agree and be treated a certain way.
No, you don't have to always agree, brother. You don't have to always agree. But you do have to understand the bottom line, and you do have to understand that perception is going to affect the bottom line. And you cannot be upset by people whose bottom line is being affected when they decide that they're going to try to curtail certain things that you want to express, when you don't seem to understand that it's going to hurt your bottom line as well. This is why, once again, brothers, I go back to this theme, and I mentioned it a few times. The highest level of thinking is the serpent. This is why Christ said, be wise as a serpent, be harmless as a dove. Many people like to have this overt confrontational mentality. I'm going to show you what I'm really all about. And, those are the people who are thinking and it's okay to be like that sometimes, depending on what the overall layout is and how much power you have. But when you're trying to ascend to a certain level of prestige, you have to do it in a way that shows guile, that shows intellect, that shows prudence. You don't want your enemy to see you coming. If your enemy sees you coming, then they're going to know how to intercept you before the time.
But there are grown men and women working for Ford Motor Company.
Yes.
That don't get to protest during their 8-hour shift because it's their job. There are grown men and women working at McDonald's. We want to have football and athletes.
Having employees picketing.
Yes,
not on office.
Yes, they have, and that's a good point. Yes, employees have picketed, but they've picketed work-related issues. The NFL players that are protesting are not picketing according to issues that they have with the NFL. It'd be one thing if they were protesting in regards to how they feel like they're being treated unfairly monetarily or due to the CBA. They're protesting issues that, according to what they claim the issue is about that they're protesting, is related to police brutality. So, once again, that's an inequivalency. Those two things are not equivalent.
office hours,
but that is
Sundays is when they make their game. Again,
that has nothing to do with McNair's comment calling these guys.
And that's fine. We're having a different discussion.
Because that comment about being inmates, that denotes that brings a connotation of bad guys, felons,
right?
Well, I understand that, and that is a semi-relevant point because we know that right now the NFL is struggling with the perception of its players. Anytime you have a league that is dominated by the black male, the perception is going to be criminality and drug use. So once again, McNair's comments did not show tact and they did not show proper decorum. But what I will say is this: at the end of the day, anybody who's running a business is not going to allow themselves to be dictated to by their employees. They're just not. The sentiment is, you have no idea how I have to run this business. You have no idea the things that I have to do on an everyday basis to keep this going.
Control. But that cliche was a bad word.
Here's what he should have said.
I've heard that a million times. It had nothing to do with sports.
They use asylum.
They say it here. They say it here. We get too mouthy here, and there'll be some executive here saying, "You think I'm gonna let the inmates run this deal?"
Absolutely. And that's my point. You're going to have a lot of super liberal members of the media trying to hype the NFL players up. You're going to take that. You're going to tolerate that. Like Jemele Hill, she was at it again on her Twitter. She was running around. See, now you see why these players are doing this and doing that. Oh, please. Your ass was away for 2 weeks and you came back like a nice little puppy because your bosses shut your ass down. So everybody has somebody to report to. This is why, brothers, once again, I tell you guys how a lot of these people in the media and a lot of these agents of chaos are being used to promote anarchy. They want the masses of people to believe things that they themselves do not adhere to. Many of these people are more worried about their job than anything else. Why did Jemele Hill come back looking humble? Because above all else, she worships her money. She worships her money. Because that's what it's all about. The bottom line of it is about the money.
No, it's you would listen to me.
Whitlock, based on the current discourse, are you worried? The players and the owners, however.
Whitlock gonna have a heart attack talking about this issue one day. All the liberal blacks gonna be happy. Fatlock finally died of a heart attack. Thank God.
Won't resolve the anthem.
No, I don't think it's going to be resolved because I think the players are completely controlled by social media.
Agreed. This issue is not going to be resolved. The only way that it's going to be resolved is through some form of extreme measures by the NFL owners. They may have to lock the players out, and they may have to threaten to remove all the players who want to kneel for the anthem. That is what it's going to come down to, in my view, unless by some magical, mystical turn of events, some change in the narrative or in the script, Colin Kaepernick is brought back into the NFL. I've mentioned this already. And even if he is brought back into the NFL, he has to be brought back in with the promise that he's going to stand. All right? That is the only way that this issue is going to be resolved as currently constituted. Because right now they have a series of players that they're going to have to remove because many of these players are not willing to they're not going to be willing to conform in any way to the wishes of the owners. And the players also are going to be at a standstill because they don't have Kaepernick to tell them what to do. Remember, these are guys who really don't know what to do themselves. They follow their emotions, and they don't want to change now because they don't want to look insincere.
Media, and again, the reason why I keep saying children, and I'm sorry, I damn near hope people are offended by it, because again, let's set up a special set of rules for NFL workers. They get to protest on their jobs. Why can't these, if they're grown men, how come they can't, this is a job. I'm like any other employee. I don't get to bring my politics to work.
And once again, I'm sure that people are going to be offended by what Whitlock says. But Whitlock is a necessary quote unquote evil. And I put that in quotes because to certain people, to certain people, he's not evil. I see nothing evil about him. I just see somebody who has disparate viewpoints. If you disagree with him, then you should be able to refute him with empirical data and facts. The fact of the matter is that everybody has a structure and a framework that is called order. The heroic black female, Jemele Hill, she has to adhere to statutes and codes at her corporation. If not, she's going to be penalized. The same thing with the NFL players or anybody else. The real issue is that the black man does not want to form his own. He wants his salvation to come through the Caucasian man. And this is why I've stated ad infinitum, what these dudes really want is a damn hug. That's all. Because they cannot, the problem with the black man is that he cannot see himself as the head of everything. He can't see himself as the emperor or the king or the leader. Even though they talk all this shit about being an African king and all this other shit, a lot of cats can't see it for real. They just talking it. Guys like Shannon Sharp who keep trying to put pressure on the owners and we need a white man to come kneel with us and all this other shit. That's why I say these guys, they're trying to hide their real inferiority complex.
During working hours.
During the Olympics.
That's not a job. And back there, when Tommy Smith, that was amateurism. They weren't getting paid.
And beyond that, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, they were being puppeted by Harry Edwards, who was a socialist also, by the way.
But
they use their platform. They use their platform, correct? And here's where the NFL players are thinking. We can tweet some out. We can put some on Instagram. But where people start to look at it is when we use our platform, which back in the day, we didn't even come out for the national anthem.
Right.
But so now they're using their platform positive, peacefully, right? If you listen to what the players are saying, it's not against the American flag.
Well, look, once again, we've gone over this over and over again. When you use terms like positive and peaceful, you have to put those terms in quotations because everybody does not view the protest as being positive or peaceful. Those are not objective terms. Those are subjective terms based on perspective. If you're an anarchist and you're a Negro who embraces chaos, then you believe that what they're doing is peaceful and positive. If you're someone who views the American flag with a form of emotionality and quote unquote patriotism, then you view what they're doing as negative. I would have no problem with what they're doing if the platform was we're against the American flag and what it stands for. Allegedly, the protest is against the police and the treatment of so-called unarmed black men. Okay? So, cats got to get their story together. Once again, if you're trying to build with somebody and you're trying to open up communications with somebody, you cannot open up communications or start the opening of communications by offending them. If the Caucasian says that they're offended by the protest against the American flag, you don't have the right to tell them that they should not be offended. And this is part of the hypocrisy of the black liberals. They're the first ones to say that you don't have the right to tell us what to be offended about. Well, conversely, you don't have the right to tell the Caucasian what they should be offended about if your overall end game is to open up communications with them. And I don't understand why cats cannot grasp this.
I don't agree with it. I believe
everybody has an opinion. I agree.
Their platform.
I agree.
What Jerry Jones believes is they call this Jerry World.
Right.
This stadium, this turf you're on. He said, I paid for that.
When you walk off of that, what's the platform? What's the platform
That's
when you
what
walk
he's
off
saying.
of that? As a player, when you walk off of that,
I'm an American media person. I don't talk a ton of politics on my show. That's what I've chosen. But if I'm a columnist and I write a column about politics in sports, I am using my platform. Now, I'm not bringing a picket sign into the New York Times, but I am using my platform. That's the job.
No, Colin, that's not equivalent. If your job as a columnist is to report the issues that are going on in the sports world, and you decide that you're going to inject politics into your column when it shouldn't be there, then your editor is going to speak with you. And eventually the person that you have to report to is going to remove you from that column. All right, that's a fact. And even in most publications in the United States, newspapers, etc., they have a political agenda. They don't want liberal or quote unquote progressive columnists at conservative newspapers and vice versa. Here in New York, the New York Post is conservative. The Daily News, New York Times are considered liberal. So.
The job. That's what they pay you for. I used to be a columnist.
No. The job isn't talk politics. You were hired as Jason Whitlock, sports columnist. It probably said sports.
That allowed me to write whatever the hell I want. I did it for the Kansas City Star. I do it for the Wall Street Journal.
Exactly. It's part of the job description. And even when you go outside of that scope, you will be reprimanded.
Well, but
that's what they're paying me for.
A quarterback or a football player thinks I am the face of a franchise.
Wrongly thinks.
Well, okay, wrongly, but that's how they view it.
Well, they shouldn't view it that way if they know history. If Joe Montana can be traded from the San Francisco 49ers, no, anything can happen. If Jerry Rice could leave San Francisco and go somewhere else, anything can happen.
What? Yeah, that's not now. And the question right here is whether or not they are going to resolve the anthem controversy. And no, because that's the whole issue right here. There is no anthem controversy from the players' standpoint.
Well, that's where you guys are at a stalemate, because the controversy is not to be determined by you. The controversy is to be determined by the people that you're aiming the protest at. Okay? Once again, and this is for the liberal blacks out there, you don't have the right to tell people that they should not dictate to you what you find offensive when you have the same mindset. The liberal blacks are telling the Caucasian that they don't have the right to be offended at the flag protest. Who are you to tell them what they should be offended by? The reason why all this shit is going in circles is because the so-called liberal black is obsessed with getting attention from the Caucasian by whatever means necessary.
Point. They're having a discussion. It's not a tomato conversation to where both guys understand what it is they're talking about and they're moving over. This is like a 2 + 2 is 5 conversation.
I agree, because you guys are operating on two totally different levels.
Where guys are so far apart that they are arguing and having completely different conversations.
Hasn't the point been made? Like, everybody knows ever since this first happened with Colin, we know now why these players have protested or did whatever. So the point is out there. So now it's about resolution, right? It's about what do we do now? Because now we're talking about whether you're going to kneel or not. Like, to me, I'm over that part.
You guys were supposed to have that shit laid out already. Why are you asking, what are we going to do now? That already shows me that you wanted the guys who were emotionally manipulated by the whole protest. As soon as somebody performs a gesture, you should be asking them, what is your process? What is your end game? It is not incumbent upon the people with power to empower you. It is incumbent upon you to figure out a way to empower yourself. Period. This is why it's laughable when you hear these liberal blacks talk about revolution. You wouldn't know the first thing about revolution when all you want to do is get on a knee and beg. You get on one knee to ask a woman to marry you, meaning to ask her permission. Every time you get on one knee, during the medieval time period, a knight got on one knee before his master. You niggas are bowing down to the Caucasian man and to the flag. You guys who want to run on the internet acting like Colin Kaepernick is so strong. You dudes ain't number slaves, man. Number a bunch of damn slaves.
Well, okay. No, listen, you're viewing it that way. But what I'm saying, the conversations and the meetings that they're having is still about the anthem. So
you would have never had those meetings if that would have never happened, right? So now that the meetings are happening, what's the next step? That's where I'm at.
But still, you can't solve this so-called anthem controversy when you have one side saying, "Look, it's not about that. We don't care about that. We are trying to talk about these issues affecting our communities."
But it's not a rule. It's not a rule.
Well, that's why they should have been going to the police chiefs, as I've stated in previous videos. If you're truly concerned about what's going on in your communities, then you go to community leaders. You don't go to NFL owners. I don't know why you guys why that's not permeating through your skulls.
Or anything, so they're really not breaking a rule. That's just what they decide to do. So it's not really controversy. It's because they're doing.
No, it's controversy because it is affecting their fan bases. People are being offended, Willie. They're being offended by what they're seeing with these pregame protests.
Doing it, so people are talking about it. Why are you kneeling? Okay, let me tell you why. And then they get their point across of what's going on in Charlottesville and all this.
But I agree. I'm saying ownership is making this about the conversations that they're having right now is let's stop protesting the flag. And then you got another thought we're not talking about.
They want to move on. The owners want to move on.
What the owners want to do is they want to move on, but they want to have an agreement that I think is just common sense. These are our stadiums. We bought these teams. The NFL is a television show, and we don't want this as a part of our script. We don't want protests during the national anthem. If you guys want to take your money that we give you and spend it on protests and supporting things, perfectly fine with it. But during our television show that pays all of us, We don't want protesting during the national anthem. And they have a right to ask for that, and they're fools if they back down.
Agreed. And I'm sure liberal blacks are going to be upset by that. At the end of the day, I want to see the so-called black man be put in the position where all he can do is count on himself and on his brothers. Because what that's going to do is that's going to force you cats to stop trying to stab each other in the back, which is what the so-called black man likes to do. It's going to force you to shirk off that feminine, my mama raised me mentality that so many cats have. And it's going to force them to accept the fact that the only master that they really should be trying to promote is themselves. Okay? So that's why all this is necessary. The rejection is necessary for the so-called black man in order for him to elevate to a higher level of comprehension.
Take the word anthem out for this question. Yeah. Resolve controversy. Take anthem out. You don't resolve controversies. You settle them.
I agree, because they will always pop back up. In other words, what Colin Cowherd is saying is that this race issue is never going away. There's never going to be a day where you're going to hold each other's hands and kumbaya it out. You know why? Because there's too much bad history, and the so-called black man has too much unresolved history. The so-called black man is like Jason Bourne. He's looking to understand his own past, and he's looking for clues to understand his own past. And just like in the Bourne Identity series, the CIA is not going to help you understand where you came from. You're going to have to figure that shit out on your own.
You negotiate. There is no ultimate happiness. There's no winner. You're going to eventually, and by the way, there'll be acrimony and bitterness. When you negotiate a contract, we're looking for ultimate resolve. It's never going to happen. There's still going to be players that are pissed. There's going to be owners that feel used. There's going to be players that feel used. There's going to be owners that feel like, you didn't respond, paying you $11 million a year. This will never be completely resolved. It will be negotiated, and there'll be bitterness.
Absolutely. In other words, the owners are going to pass a provision, or try to in the offseason, that will forbid any more protesting during the game, which is what they should have did in the last offseason.
On both sides.
And I'm going to be bitter because I'm sitting here thinking about my mother. Honestly, because my parents divorced. My mother worked 2 jobs for me and my brother to be where we are right now. And because some owner says in a private meeting, inmates run the asylum or inmates run the prison, I'm going to take off work. Get the out of here. Coming up.
Yeah, that woman worked 2 jobs so that you can eat all the damn food out the refrigerator. But anyway,